All right, thank you, Sabah. Hi, everyone. My name is Elaine Fernandez. I am the head of the psychology department at Help University. And today we are going to be talking to you about psychology. What is it really all about? We get a lot of questions, I think, when we go and visit schools or we encounter students and parents at education fairs. And one of the questions that we always get is, what is psychology? What can I do with psychology? Is psychology going to be relevant for me? And so the purpose of this forum today is not to hear from me about what psychology is really all about, but from three of our graduates who have gone through our program, who started out with potentially very similar questions as yours, and have had the chance to experience what psychology is really all about for themselves. And they are going to be sharing their thoughts, their experiences with you today. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to your panel. Our first panelist is Miss Colleen Ng. She is a pastoral care teacher at Nobel International School. Colleen, can I just have you to quickly introduce yourself and what you do?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Colleen, and as Elaine mentioned, I'm a pastoral care teacher in Nobel International. So basically, my role involves identifying students' needs, speaking to them should they need a hand, and really just directing them to the correct sources should they need help. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. Our next speaker is Miss Joyce Lee. She's a very recent graduate. She actually just finished her Bachelor of Psychology degree with us last semester. She's currently a finalist in the Alibaba Get Ahead Challenge, and I would just like her to introduce herself, Joyce.
Hi everyone, I hope you have had your lunch. This is Joyce, and as Miss Elaine mentioned, I have just recently graduated from HELP's psychology program, just less than 2 months ago. And yeah, I'm currently working on the Alibaba Get Global Challenge. And yeah, thanks.
Okay, and finally we have Miss Rachael. She is currently a business analyst with Boston Consulting Group, and she was also our valedictorian for the graduating class of 2019. So, Rachel, can I get you to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, Rachel here. Sorry that my video is not working at the moment, but I'll try again later. But hi, I'm currently a business analyst with the Boston Consulting Group. So what we really do is we're kind of like doctors for businesses. But right now, I think my main work revolves around a lot of analysis and also data synthesis. Aside from that, I'm also the co-founder of AgriMatch. This is a social enterprise geared at helping poor farmers in Myanmar combat food security and also poverty as well.
Okay, thank you guys for introducing yourself. I'm just going to jump right into the meat of today's forum. The first question I have for you really is what made you choose to study psychology? Colleen, you want to start?
Okay, I think for me, many of you may be able to relate. I had too many interests. I didn't know what to study. So I actually went to seek professional help. I went to take a psychology test. I went to take a career test. And actually, I had a counselor who told me that based on my results, she found out that one of my highest interests is people. All right. And she found out that I love helping people. So actually, she was the one who directed me to psychology. She said, why not you go to different universities and ask about the psychology program and see whether that suit you, whether that is of your interest. And that was really how I ended up studying psychology.
Okay, so you started off with very little idea about what psychology was to begin with, and then just sort
Yeah,
of found your way.
definitely.
Okay, Rachel. Rachel, are you there?
Sorry, I was talking on mute as always. Hi. I think for me it was quite a spontaneous decision actually. I really wanted to study medicine. But at one point we were looking at the situation, at that point it was like overpopulation of doctors. And then, my mom said, instead of physical health, I guess, let's try to focus on a niche area and let's look at mental health. And I think that's how this whole journey of psychology kind of went upon. Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about how that has evolved for you. Joyce, how about you?
Right. Actually, for me, it's almost the same as Miss Colleen. So initially, I had a wide range of interests as well. I wanted to do engineering actually, but because of the cost, it's rather high. So I ended up narrowing down to business and psychology. But why I chose psychology is because it seems cool and mysterious, and also because I was just really curious about what it really is. Because the awareness, at least for my social circle, it's very low, and so that further enhanced my curiosity. So, and also because I've always thought that psychology is all about like talking to people and listening to their struggles and problems and helping them to get through it, which I thought is really meaningful, and hence that's how I ended up choosing psychology. Yeah, so it's all about curiosity and wanting to help people. Yeah.
All right, so I think that's a good point to start with because it seems like, at least for two of you, you kind of walked into psychology without necessarily having a lot of knowledge about what it entailed. So, can I ask you to, maybe Joyce, you would just want to pick up from here, to share what your expectations were coming into the program and what and how did they evolve as the program went on?
Right, sure. So first of all, definitely not reading minds. Yeah, but because at that time I didn't have a solid idea about psychology, so the most I had was like from TV shows where you always see psychologists talking to like someone sitting or lying on sofa, right? So I did some research, and actually most of the research that I've found, they mention things like studying about human behaviors, understanding human motivations and all, and a lot about diagnosing and treating mental disorders. So that's my expectations going into psychology. And that's also why I actually considered a lot about going into clinical psychology or counseling. Yeah. So with that in mind, I enter psychology expecting a lot to learn a lot about clinical psychology. But of course, that's not only that, it's not limited to that only, because while it's true that psychology talks about abnormal psychology, it also talks a lot about I was really surprised to know that there's more than that. Basically, psychology presents in our everyday lives. So other than clinical psychology, there's also like things like IO psychology, forensic psychology. There's also even psychology of film, which I took. Yeah, so it's really interesting. And what surprised me the most is actually having research in psychology. I have never imagined myself doing research and like having to study statistics in psychology. So yeah, so that's the biggest surprise for me.
Just picking up on what she said about research and statistics, Joyce actually happens to be a very good researcher
Thank
and
you.
recently just passed a thesis with
Thank
very good
you.
results. So, from being surprised at having to study research to being able to master research in 3 years, well done, Joyce.
Thank you. Thanks, supervisor.
Okay, Colleen, you wanna jump in there? You were in a similar situation as Joyce, not really very aware of psychology, but what were your expectations and what's your experience? Were there any discrepancies?
Yeah, very similar to Joyce. Thank you for sharing your experience. Because I think for us, if we do not know what to expect in the first place, we always thought that psychology is just studying the human brain, right? So I just went in with this concept that okay, I'm just gonna understand behavior, understand human brains, and that's about it. I went in with this understanding that okay, so I want to help people, right? So I need to first understand how my brain works, how I'm going to help myself before I could give back. Before I could help others around me. Then, of course, statistics was one of the main things that I was very surprised with because I wasn't mentally prepared for like maths, for stats and to run SPS tests or whatever not. And it just threw me off. And I really, really hated research in the first place because I felt like that wasn't what I signed up for initially. So I thought that, okay, I may have chosen the wrong path then because, I thought it's just about studying human behaviors. But I think what help has offered is beyond what I could expect. But at the same time, I understood the necessity of research, after joining the program, because essentially whatever that we are doing revolves around research, right? If you want to find new solutions and stuff like that, you need to actually research on what previous people have found And I think, yeah, although I started hating it, resenting it, we have very kind lecturers who actually told us, the value of research. And I think from there, I started appreciating it even more. I guess I had to switch my attitude a little bit, to tell myself that if I really want to help people, this is really one thing that I need to do because it's part of the program. So I think it was a change of mindset for me before I thoroughly enjoyed the whole entire process. Yeah, so that was really the most surprising bit for me.
Again, someone who started out hating it and ended up mastering it after 3 years. Yeah, I think you both probably mentioned the one thing that most people are surprised about psychology is our reliance on research. And Rachel, I don't know if this is the same for you, whether this is something that you were surprised by as well, but how about you jump into that before I sort of summarize what you guys just said?
Yeah, I think for me, what surprised me was the subjectivity that you have to be comfortable with in psychology. I think I came from a pure science background. Everything was very objective. It was 2 plus 2 equals to 4. And then coming into psychology was very interesting. It's like 2 plus 2 can be 5, but tell me why it can be 6 too. And I think that was something that I was grappling with, but I ended up really enjoying at the end. And I actually enjoyed the statistical aspect of psychology as well.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of people don't realize about psychology is that it's not just the study of human behavior; it's the science of human behavior, and science necessarily requires us to put our ideas and our assumptions to the test, which is why there is such a heavy research component. Just to pick up on that though, because this is one of the most surprising parts of what you learn in psychology, and the one aspect that I think a lot of students struggle, I think, as Colleen mentioned, to come to terms with as being relevant to a psychologist. How has the emphasis on research and statistics and all of that actually helped? Has it helped in how you approach your work now and how you approach your life in general? Rachel?
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it has been very useful in my current work, actually, where I'm actually analyzing a lot of data. I'm actually using statistics to actually identify, for example, how we form certain policies for the government. And I think that has been very transferable, and I'm very grateful to have learned it. And I think it's not just about in psychology, right? You can actually apply it to huge applications in various different fields as well, and also in your workplace. And with regards to that, you also develop a very critical and logical mindset, I think, through learning these methods. And that's something that I've been quite glad that we went through, because it's been very useful so far, not just in work, but also in everyday life.
Okay, and I think your work is quite different to what you would expect a traditional psychologist to be in. I'm guessing. Yeah, as an analyst with a consulting group, you're quite involved in sort of business and organizations and policies as opposed to necessarily working one on one with people. Is that true?
Yes, we. I guess one thing about the people aspect comes in, I guess, it's in when you work within teams, and also when you work with, oh, and when you work with clients as well. I think that's the larger aspect of things. Um, Aside from that, also with regards to maybe the psychological aspect comes in maybe in organizational psychology. I think that's something when we reform certain companies. That's where I think I have of a leg up there because of having studied psychology, which I think has been quite helpful as well.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Colleen,
Yeah.
that emphasis on science and scientific thinking, how has it actually had an impact on how you uh, navigate your work and your day-to-day life?
Right. I think, unlike Rachel, because my work doesn't require me to run statistics. It doesn't require me to run data. How am I actually applying what I learned then from research? I think definitely is the skills that I gain from it. I think one thing good about the psych program is that they don't just give us memory stuff, because a lot of times when we learn things, it's based on memory, and after that we forget after exams. But I think what I really value from the whole research process is the skill that I gain from it, which is critical thinking and, of course, being curious. So I think how it has helped me in my current work, because I work in a school setting, whenever I find some things that need improvement, I would take the initiative to read up on journal articles, or even to do research, basic research in the first place. So I think it's the skill that has helped me every day to be curious, because I mean, let's face it, I wouldn't on my normal day basis read journal article if it weren't because of curiosity and interest. So I think what I have, my biggest takeaway from the whole process is the skills that has helped me. Because of that, then I would take the initiative to find out solutions. How can we improve the well-being of our students? How can we come up with activities that promote well-being? So I think all of this takes someone to have the initiative, to be curious in the first place, and to also have the passion to find a solution. So I think with the skills given, with the skills that I've obtained, from research, to not be easily satisfied with whatever answers that I get, but to dwell in deeper, to not be afraid to ask questions. I think this has helped me to approach my work very differently. So I go in with the mentality of not just working, but with the mindset of how we can improve things, how we should not just accept the current situation as we are, but think of ways to improve the well-being of our colleagues, the well-being of our students. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. Joyce?
Right. So I think research, because psychology has a lot of this subjectivity, like Rachel mentioned. So because of this subjectivity nature, I think the research part actually offers the objective um, bonus to psychology, as in research is how we actually find a solid ground to support the unpredictable nature of psychology. So also because how it has helped me in my life is that when I was trying to share something about psychology to my family or friends, I would at least look up and make sure that these facts are true, and there's actually solid ground to back up these um, facts before I share to them. So that's how research has helped me in my life, I would say. Also because I have not yet gone into the working world yet, so I might not be able to share so much about how research has helped me in my life, in my work. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so it's helped you sort of have more meaningful conversations that are grounded in um,
True research.
actual evidence
Yeah.
to support what
Correct.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's really important, especially when we're talking about psychology, because we are representing what psychology is to the general public.
Yes.
Okay. Um, what about the teaching and learning experience at Help did you most enjoy as part of the program? So we talked about what you guys found surprising and a bit difficult, which is stats. What did you enjoy about the program and about the learning that you had within the program?
All right. So I guess start with me first.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Right. Okay. I would say I enjoy most of the lectures because I can really tell that most of the lecturers have paid a lot of efforts in preparing the lectures, and I really appreciate it. And one good thing about all the lecturers here is that they really encourage questions and discussions from students and during classes, and they are very ready to answer all the queries. And I think this really helps us students to clarify and learn together, at the same time making the class more interactive and less dull. Um, I would also recommend note-taking habit during lecture. Um, so like students can actually get friends to do notes, maybe on Google Docs. So you have each other's back in case you miss out something important. Another thing is that I'm not sure how others think about it. I honestly appreciate having small quizzes every week because yeah, because it kind of pushed me to do revisions every week, and this really helped me to keep all the materials fresh in my mind. So most importantly, it becomes easier to prepare for finals because you don't have to like study all over again. And one last thing perhaps is having tutorials during our year 1 and year 2. I really enjoy the tutorials a lot because it helped me to have better understandings on the materials, and this is done through like very fun and interactive activities in the tutorials. And also because the tutors are mostly graduates, so basically they are our seniors, right? So it's very good because you can get opinions from someone who has already been through what we are currently going through. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Joyce. That was quite thorough and very good tips as well for those of you who are thinking about studying psychology, especially studying psychology with us. Those are very good tips. Just saying. Okay, Rachel, how about you? I think you're still on mute.
Yes. Sorry, I was speaking on mute. Oh, this is happening all over again. I think for me, I really appreciated the familial community that we had at Help. That was very imperative, I think, towards my growth at Help, and also of my friends. We found that when we were able to talk to our teachers after work hours, if necessary, or if actually going up to the teachers during their class breaks to actually ask them questions. They were very approachable, they were very friendly, and they were very helpful. I think that was something. It's quite a characteristic, I think, of Help University, and that's something that I think when comparing with other friends at different universities, they didn't seem to have um, that personality trait that most Helpians have, and I think that was something that I vividly remember and very much appreciate.
Okay, the approachability and the willingness to engage in discussion with students. Okay, Colleen?
For me, I think it was the assurance that our classes are always a safe space for us to discuss any questions at all. I like the assurance of how we won't be judged, and we welcome all sorts of perspectives. And at the end of the day, it's trying to understand why one another think the way they thought. So it's not about being judgmental, but everyone comes in with an open mind of acceptance. And I think that was what I really appreciated because I was a very reserved person. And I was very scared of venturing beyond my comfort zone or thinking beyond my comfort zone in the first place. But I think because of the assurance and how everyone was so open to just accepting any thoughts at all, I have also learned from that to be open, to be more open minded, to understand that when people think a certain way, I shouldn't be so quick to judge, but I should understand why are they thinking the way they thought. So I really love the assurance because it has helped me to grow as a person, and now I think in my everyday life I'm also applying that, to understand things from another person's point of view and to really appreciate the diversity that we have. And I think another thing is also that our lecturers, they are very willing to learn. I remember being in Puan Fatima's class, and she is not at a very young age, but she was always so willing to learn. And I think the same goes to all the lecturers. They are never afraid to admit if they are wrong. And I just love how humble they are because it just means that in the learning environment, yes, we respect our lecturers, but at the same time, everyone is also a learner. And I love how, we get to discuss ideas and we get to just approach them because they are never one to say that, hey, I'm the lecturer, I know it all. But I like how warm our lecturers are because then they give us this assurance again, that it's okay to discuss things and it's okay to learn from one another. Yeah.
Okay, I'm very glad to hear this because that's certainly one of the things that we try to strive for. And it ties back into sort of, the scientific mind, right? Where if you're not willing to be wrong, it's very difficult to be a scientist because the whole point is to find out whether or not you are wrong. And in general, I think that's sort of the mindset that we try to model, I guess, so that our students can also see what that looks like and then cultivate that inquiring nature for themselves. And I'm very glad to hear that, Colleen. Okay. Moving on, though, I think what a lot of people are interested in knowing about the study of psychology is, will that actually, so it's nice to hear that you had a good experience sort of learning the content of psychology and sort of the way to think about things and so on. But does that actually translate into a solid career path for people? There's this I guess this perception that a psychologist can only be sort of a clinical psychologist or a counselor, and that there's very little opportunities outside of that for people in sort of the everyday working world, so in the corporate sector and so on. So would you mind just sharing your thoughts on that about whether or not it's actually prepared you to have a fruitful career outside maybe what is traditionally a psychologist's career? Colleen, you want to start?
Okay, sure. I think for me, that was really one of the biggest concerns I had. Because coming into psychology initially, of course, it was all very interesting, right? But yes, you were right. I was very concerned because I didn't know whether I wanted to be a clinical psychologist or whether I wanted to be a counselor in the first place. So I was very worried that I would be jobless, but ultimately, I think that is not a real concern because ultimately, psychology is the study of human behaviors, right? It's the science of studying about human behaviors. And I think wherever we go, we should perceive, or at least that's how I see it. I perceive psychology as an added bonus because wherever we go, we are dealing with humans anyways. So with this head knowledge and with the skills that you get from psychology, I think at least for me, it has helped me to understand just humans from a very different perspective. And I think you don't have to worry about being jobless because although, yes, that was one of my biggest concerns, I think nowadays people are also aware that in Malaysia, we don't have enough people who are actually talking about mental health. We don't have enough people who are actually emphasizing on well-being. And I think it doesn't matter where you end up at, wherever you are, I think you can always find yourself playing an active role. So for example, in my school, I can choose to, let's say I'm not from a psych background, I can choose to just teach or do whatever. But because I was more aware of mental health, I wanted to make sure that we have a platform to discuss about things like mental health. Right. So I think wherever jobs you find yourself landing into, you could work as a HR person, you could work anywhere at all, really. What really matters is what you do next, what you choose to do with the skills or the knowledge that you have gained and how you translate that into the workplace. So if there is no one talking about, well-being, or there's no one actually challenging your thoughts, why not you be the one being curious? Why not you be the one who initiate different stuffs that you want. So I think that's how I see it. So like for me, I'm very thankful because of the knowledge and how it has helped me as a person to grow, to be more intuitive. I am seeing things from a much different perspective, and I am passionate in pioneering different things, especially in the aspect of well-being.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. Joyce, you want to jump in? Joyce, are you there?
Muted.
Right, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Right. So because I am currently in the stage of job hunting, right? So perhaps I will share a little bit of how this program helped me to become career ready. So I think this program it helped us to like prepare in a sense that they have subjects to guide us to prepare complete resume or cover letter or even understanding our career interests as well as perhaps having guidelines to prepare our interviews. They even have this interview simulation thing for us students to like kind of have an image of how interviews or how job hunting process is gonna be like in the future. So I think this is especially helpful and relevant now that I'm in the stage of like job searching. Yeah, and also I agree with what Colleen has mentioned because now that I'm looking for jobs myself, I would say like there's a lot of opportunities out there for us psychology students. And so after all, what it matters is that it all boils down to how we actually utilize or apply our knowledge as well as our attitudes towards the jobs and our willingness to learn in the process. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Joyce. That's a very good point that you brought up about willingness to learn, because the workplace is never going to stay static. So that is certainly an important feature to have in a good graduate, in a good employee later on. Okay, Rachel, do you want to jump in here?
Sure. I think this question Really, it's a very important one, I think, for me because I think I've jumped into quite a different field. It's a field it's quite non-traditional for psychology graduates, and one thing I think first is that yes, you if you are going to come into psychology, your options are limitless. I think maybe for the exception for, let's say, if you want to study law or medicine, those requires qualifications, for example. But in terms of various other fields, I even know my friends now who are doing, for example, they're in market research, they're in policy and government work, and for me myself in management consulting. And I think hopping on to Jie's point on willingness to learn is that, even for example for my situation now, I'm in management consulting. Psychology provides a very interesting outlook because you're always working with people, but also understanding that there are certain key concepts and uh, I would say skills that you need to pick up, like for example business sense, or if you need to sharpen your analytical skills, and that's where the willingness to learn comes in. And so long as you have that, I think you can really it's very much applicable to any other job that you would like to do. For me, I think personally, even I think on top of my experience at Help, what I had to do was I had to do several internships for consulting as well. I also picked up on several other programs outside where I learned about business acumen, and also studied for my GMAT outside of school. And I think so long as you're able to have that strive for excellence and also that drive to continuously learn, you'll be able to apply to any job that you like.
Okay. I think that hopefully that gives some of people concerned about the job prospects for a psychology graduate a little bit of relief, that they might still be able to find and work in the industries that they are interested in. Okay, so I'm aware of the time, and we do want to have some time for questions from the audience. So perhaps just to close out, what advice would you have for students who are thinking about studying psychology but are unsure about whether it's a good choice? Maybe Rachael, we start with you.
Sure, advice. I think one thing I heard from a mentor say is that you can kind of somewhat plan for the next 5 years, right? Maybe 10 years seems like a stretch because there's just so much uncertainty. I think what's good is that do a stock take. Go to a nice cafe, sit down with a book, and like write down where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's your strengths? What's your interests? And see how then you may then want to chart your path. Is psychology a way to go? And if that's something that you do enjoy, have a read about it. I mean, there are a lot of online courses now and also publications that we can have a look at, what's psychology about, before diving into what you will actually study at university. And I think having that stock take and doing a bit of research may be quite a great investment for the next 5 years to come.
Okay, thank you, Rachael. Joyce?
Right. Well, I think it's really important that you try to figure out whether um, you truly have a passion in psychology, because I personally think that it's really important that you pick something that you genuinely feel interested in. So what worked for me was that I reached out to some of my family members or close friends who know me well enough and get their opinions on me going into psychology field. And I also took some career tests actually to figure out my career interests. You may also actually want to like attend career fairs, of course when the situation allows, and or visit the university website to like find out a list of the subjects they offer, and then try to understand as much as possible what the program is about and what is expected of you as a student. And perhaps last advice, I've seen a lot of like people asking on Facebook, like on social media page like confession page, although it can be helpful, there might be chances that you don't get the complete information or you might get biased comments. So what I would suggest is that best is still to actually consult the professionals, like look out for or attend to the department's consultant or professionals, yeah, to get at least professional advice.
Okay, thank you, Joyce. That last one was a very interesting addition. Okay, Colleen, you want to close us out?
Sure. Thank you, Joyce and Rachel. I will tap onto what both of them have shared actually, because yes, you definitely need the passion for people, and yes, you definitely need to have a future mindset of where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So I think an advice I would give to students who are thinking about psychology but who are also not so sure is to really talk to people around you. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because yes, you need to be ready to embrace challenges. I always tell people this, that actually psychology is not an easy subject. You know, you will have a lot of times where you may question why are you taking psychology in the first place. You know, you will have times where you don't know whether it's a good choice, and it's okay. You know, but I just want to let you know that when you go in, be ready with this kind of challenges, because ultimately, although you may not see it yet, I did not see how it could challenge me to grow. You know, I was struggling in my first year, but I think ultimately, you know, it has helped me so much, and it has helped me to grow as a person. So I think just be ready to embrace challenges. Don't be afraid to face challenges, and be ready to venture beyond your comfort zone. Be ready to think beyond what you currently have as your mindset, and just be open to the different possibilities that are ahead. So yeah, just don't be afraid of what lies ahead, and have the courage to go with the mindset that you will benefit and you will grow to be a better person.
Okay, thank you guys. I believe there are a few questions in the chat. I will go through them now. Um, from Parameshwaran, I think he wants to know whether you see psychology as a social science or a natural science. Would anyone like to answer this? Maybe Rachel, since you came from a hard science background and decided to switch over to psychology.
Sorry, just to recap, was it there was the question whether it's a social science or a natural science?
Yes.
It's a very interesting question. To be honest, I think in psychology, or at least at Help, we had a really great breadth of scope for psychology. So we covered a lot. We covered cognitive science, we covered social science, and also various aspects, some of it like criminal psychology, which I really enjoyed. So I guess it really depends on how the scope is defined. And, you know, if you're looking at psychology programs, have a look at their course outline, see what they cover, see what they're focusing on. Personally, I really liked the one at Help because it was quite extensive, while it had quite a choice and diversity in their course structure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just going to pick up on that. Psychology is very broad as a field. So, depending, as Rachel says, on the particular discipline within psychology that you're in, it can be seen as more as a social science, or it can be seen as a natural science. So, the social science elements would encompass things like more the counseling side of things, and the natural science parts would be cognitive science, neuroscience, biological psychology, and so on. So the human being is made up of both biology as well as our psychology. So the field necessarily covers all of that. So that's a very good question. Thank you for that question. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
The next question, do you guys think that a good command and understanding of psychology is an excellent skill to have as a politician? As politicians have to convince the general public and other politicians to see their view and argue for the policies they stand for, as well as using psychological techniques to get voters to vote for them. Anyone want to jump in on this one?
This is actually quite funny because I was at a conference once and it was about policy making. It was a student competition, and one person came up to me, "Oh, hey, you study psychology, right? You know, I'm looking for a psychologist, you know, to draft speeches for politicians to influence people, you know." And I was thinking, yes, you know, psychology has that power to you know, once you know certain concepts and skills of how to influence people, but then, you know, it's also going back to your moral compass as well. You know, how do you want to use that power? And I think, so to answer your question, yes, it does have that you know, a good command and understanding can have that effect. And it's also then going back to another kind of question is like, how do you want to use that power, and how do you want to use that knowledge and skill in the actual real life world? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Rachel just touched on a very important point, which is the ethics of a psychologist. And maybe, Colleen, would you like to talk a little bit about how ethics works and how you experienced it within the program, and also how that translates to your work now?
Yep, I think intention is very important. I think in psychology, one of the main things that we focus a lot is ethics, right? And we even have just, one subject talking about it. And I think ultimately, yes, as what Rachael said, although it does give you the plus point of, being charismatic, being able to persuade people with the knowledge that you have and the skills that you have, with the speed of how you talk or whatever not. But ultimately is what you use it for. And I think it's very important because in psychology, we learn about consent. And a lot of times, if you want to talk about something, all right, and if you want to, especially I think as politicians, you want to talk about other people in the first place, you need to know how to ask permission. And I think consent is not as simple as just, filling up a form. A lot of times, consent varies for certain degrees. So you really need to do your prep work well and know what do you actually need to do. If not, you will get yourself into big trouble if you do not do the proper research and follow the proper procedures when it comes to consent. And I think tapping onto politician, because recently I was involved in a webinar and I saw them talking about politics as well, right? And I think although psychology is like an added bonus, ultimately I think as politicians you need to know that there are also different fields, and politicians have different roles. So one of the questions that was being thrown was that, do you think studying psychology would make you more charismatic, and would that be a plus point? And one of the politicians actually answered and said yes, although that does help you, but you need to also understand that, a lot of times it's not just those who are speaking that matters. A lot of times, a lot of people are doing a lot of background work, doing research, helping to just prep whatever that the person is saying. So I also want to encourage those who maybe may not be as eloquent in speaking, may not see them being, as outspoken, but still want to play a role in politics. I mean, ultimately, you can. You just have to also figure out the different fields and the different options that you can have in that particular field.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Colleen. I believe there's another question. I think this is directed at Rachael. Rachael, were you in any way disadvantaged when you applied for work, whether in your present organization or anywhere else, because you were a psych major? You're on mute again.
Thanks for the question, Dr. Gerard. Hope everyone can hear me. I applied to management consulting firms actually, and some sustainability consulting firms, and also research firms as well. I think in no way I was disadvantaged, but it really depends on how you actually, for example, showcase your skills. So what I mean by this is, for example, if I were applying to a research or consulting firm, I'll highlight the analytical abilities that will hone throughout the course, right? So it's talking about, our advanced quantitative methods research classes and all of these type of things that we've done, and then using that as your selling point. But I think one thing to note is that, when you are applying outside of your field, you can definitely do so, and it's just that you need to make sure you are then on the ball with whatever that area requires. So if, let's say, it requires mathematical skills or a knowledge of a certain industry, that's the onus is on you to ramp up and to make sure that you are aware of it when you apply. So let's say if you're applying for what can it be? For example, a fast-moving consumer goods company, you would need to then know a lot about their products alongside, and then your degree from help with regards to psychology can also be a foundation to what the skills that you can offer to that company. So it's really identifying what the company is looking for and what you have, and finding synergies within that point. So far, I think I didn't see any disadvantages. The only thing is that, it's because I'm applying outside of my field, there's a bit more work for me to ramp up on certain industries, but that has been fine, right? So that's something that, you may need to kind of identify and make sure you prep well for it. Preparation is key.
Okay, thank you, Rachael. I believe there's another question, and I think maybe Joyce, you can start with the answer for this one, which is, in the past, there have been experiments like Stanford Prison Experiment, Little Albert, Pavlov. While there is no doubt that these experiments experiments were to some extent unethical, do you still nevertheless believe that the end justifies the means in regards to the breakthroughs achieved by these experiments? Joyce?
Um, I would say I hold a pretty neutral position stance in this sense, because
Are you on mute?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would say I hold a pretty neutral stance in this sense, because well, these are some of the most famous psychology experiments that we know, and they, in fact and indeed, they actually like offered a lot of like grounds for the theories that we have today. So, but you said that the end justifies the means. It actually boils down to the intentions that these researchers had at that time, because um, even though their method or the processes, the procedures were unethical at the time, but they had the intentions of wanting to contribute to the breakthrough in psychology. So I would say it's a blend of both ethical and unethical. And because people after that, people realized that, okay, these procedures are unethical, and hence that is why we focus and emphasize more on the ethics in psychology afterwards, and we are become more rigorous in terms of conducting our study to ensure that we don't cause any harm in the process. So yeah, that's my sense in this sense. Thanks. I
Okay,
hope that
thanks,
answered your
Joyce.
question.
Colleen?
Thank you, Joyce. I think um, the end results definitely should not justify ethically, because if you remember, like for the Stanford prison experiment, they even have to stop the experiment halfway because of the damage that's being done to the participants, right? So I think, yes, although they show breakthrough in sciences, I think the reason why we are learning it in psychology is so that we don't repeat what other people have done. Because I think in psychology, the most important thing is, of course, just now we mentioned consent, we mentioned ethics, and you also need to ensure that the well-being of your participants are being protected as well. Because even if you use deception in your experiment, you need to make sure that there is a debriefing process, right? So yes, although they have showed us, breakthrough in sciences, we learn about conditioning, we learn about obedience, but I think this is where researchers like us come in. We use literature, we use literacy devices like that, and we use experiences like that to actually help us to research further, to see how we can use a different approach to actually find breakthroughs. So we learn from them, yes, but at the end, I think consent is still important, ethics is still important, and you still need to make sure that the well-being of your participants are of top priority. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Colleen. I think Rachel has another question, but maybe can you provide us a little bit more context? Do you guys have any information on the process of practicing clinical psychology? Do you mean how we go about becoming a clinical psychologist, Rachel? Could you follow that up? Okay. I think this question I will take. Well, if you want to become a clinical psychologist, you do need to have an undergraduate degree in psychology, and usually you would have to achieve a pretty good result, which is a second upper and above, in order to be able to qualify for most clinical psychology programs. And a lot of programs also look for a little bit of prior engagement with the mental health community, whether it's in the form of internships, whether it's in the form of volunteering work with mental health organizations. And the reason for this is because they want to see that you have um, a good understanding of the expectations of working in the mental health field, especially as a clinical psychologist, with the demands uh, that are present in dealing with people with mental health issues, sometimes quite severe mental health issues. And so they want to know that you have a good understanding of what that would entail before you apply. In addition to that, this is not a requirement, but I think from my perspective as somebody who's been in the field for a while, it's a good idea to also get some working experience before you apply to a clinical psychology or even a counseling program, because the populations that you will deal with will be very diverse, from young people to adults to working adults to older adults. So having some experience of sort of life outside of university can give you a lot of more perspective of the kind of issues that people face in various stages of life and so on, and it will help with engaging with clients a lot better and also giving you a sense of stability. But also it helps to clarify for you as well whether this is something that you really want to do, because clinical psychology, even the study of clinical psychology, is very stressful. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, because we are engaging directly with the well-being of people. So it is something that you do want to consider before going into the field. Um, yes, so you need a master's degree at the very least to practice in Malaysia. And if you want to practice overseas, it's probably a good idea to study in the country that you eventually want to practice in, and certain countries require doctorate level study. So it's a good idea to research where you want to practice, where you want to work, and then see what the requirements are in each of these individual countries before you embark on your postgraduate career. Does that clarify your question, Rachel? Sorry, I think my my computer just hung for a little while. Not in Malaysia, you don't need a PhD, but in certain countries you would need one. I believe places like the UK would require you to have a PhD in order to be a registered psychologist. So it really depends on the countries that you are in.
Great.
Okay, is there any more questions from the audience? All right, if there are no more questions, I'd just like to wrap up. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. I hope that the insights from the panel have given you a better idea of what studying psychology is like, especially studying psychology at Help University. And I hope that this has been useful for you in helping you decide what you plan to do in the months and years to come with regard to your choice of where to study. If you are considering help, please be aware that we are more than happy to answer any questions that you have separately. I believe you will have our contact details. Mine is my email address. You can drop me an email to set up an appointment. I'm happy to talk to you personally. And yeah, we hope to see you in our program soon. Take care, and thank you very much for joining us today. Pass it back to Sabah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Elaine, and to all our panelists as well. And before I wrap up, I would like to invite Dr. Jerry, if you have anything to say before we end our session.
Yeah,
Sir.
thank you very much, Rachael, Colleen, and sorry, I just missed out the last speaker.
Joyce.
Joyce, thank you.
Would you
Thank
want
so
to
much again
switch
for
on
sharing
your camera?
Yes. Thank you so much again for sharing your time with all of us. Really insightful, and we couldn't be more proud of your success and of your future success. it's really heartwarming to see how you have all grown over the years. Rachel, your work in Boston Consulting. Often people have a very narrow notion, isn't it? That's why I asked that question of psychology. And what can you do with a psychology degree? I think you are the perfect example of the depth and breadth of the field that allows you to be able to apply for most workplaces. For that's how flexible it is, because wherever you have people, the degree in psychology is a fantastic stepping stone towards future careers in most fields. Yeah, and of course, Colleen and Joyce, Colleen, where you are in your work in the school, and that's an important part. Having been involved in K to 12 education for quite some years now, the need for pastoral care and mental health practitioners is so critical. Yeah, in fact, in next week I'm going to talk about developing mentally healthy and resilient children with another parent for our international school. So that's a major area. So and I wish you well in your work in Nobel. And Joyce, you just graduated, and I hope that you will find something that will help you with your journey or your continued journey of growth in the field of psychology. So thank you, all of you. Thank you, Elaine, also for moderating the session. Thank you.